Greetings, everyone. P. Pardo here from Sea Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of What's Hot with Sea Tranquility. And that's right, you guessed it, in the co-captain's chair, Mr. Stephen Reid.
How we doing, Pete?
Doing good, doing good. I was just telling
Thanks.
Stephen my trials and tribulations of my sprained ankle, which I won't get into, but yeah, silly little accident. Hopefully that'll be healed up and better over the next couple of days. But anyway, Steven's here to talk about a couple releases, three to be exact, that he has been checking out of late that we figured you folks would be interested in hearing. So we were debating whether to do all separate episodes, but we'll just, they'll all be in one. You've obviously seen the bands in the title of the video, so you know what it's all about. So we'll have Steven kick us off with the first of the three that he's going to talk about in this episode.
Okay, well, I will start with the one that my guess would be that people will not really have heard of, and that is a band called Haven of Echoes, and the album is called The Indifferent Stars. I really like the artwork here. We've kind of got some, like a dandelion on fire that kind of looks like a space scene or something that's really very cool. So this is a two-piece band with a guy called Andreas Hack, who is credited with, well, he's actually credited with everything else is what he's credited with. So he plays most of the stuff on the album. And a guy called Paul Sadler, who is the singer, and he plays guitar on one of the 6 songs. Now, there are other contributors here. We have Narissa Schwartz, who plays electric harp and a little bit of keys, and Wolfgang Obermann, who plays drums. Now, if that threesome of Hack, Schwartz, and Obermann sounds a little familiar, it's because they are the backbone of an excellent German band called Freaky Drift. And the three of them are back here again with Haven of Echoes. The difference, of course, being that Frequency Drift, I think they've had an instrumental album along the way, but they're known for having a female singer. So I would imagine that the difference here is that because we've got Paul Sadler on vocals, the thought has been, let's call it something else. Because it sounds similar, but it sounds different in a good way. I mean, I really like Frequency Drift a lot, but there's no point in having two bands that sound the same. So Hack wrote all bar one of the 6 songs that are here, and Schwartz, who is a talented solo artist in their own right, provides a song called The Lord Giveth. So Sadler, I didn't know him. He's in a band called Spires. I didn't know them at all. They're a UK band. He reminds me of a more sorrowful Damien Wilson. So he's a real singer. He's in a motor. He's not kind of like a proud strutting frontman kind of thing, but it works perfectly for what's happening here. There's a kind of lush musical framework, and they kind of fall into that current trend of, I would say it's a kind of mournful, contained progressive rock. But there's something much brighter and maybe more vibrant happening here. And I think that it maybe puts this album in a slightly different place. There are lots of kind of these, slow, mournful, atmospheric bands out there just now. This is doing something along those lines. I find it a little bit more hooky. There's a little bit more kind of song structure going on here. And I really like it. Stasis, which is song number 3, I think a really good example of what the album serves up. There's melody is always kind of at the beating heart of what's going on. Schwartz, with the work that she does with electric harp, kind of sweeps underneath and just gives you a different layer you wouldn't necessarily expect. And then you've got really expressive but never overwrought vocals that really work very well in songs like Let Them In. That's the album's longest track, and it kind of moves through different sections that build and build, and then it kind of knock it all back down again until you get vocals, piano and drums and nothing else. And then it kind of starts on that journey again, which I must admit, I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. You've got the Orator's Gift, that kind of, it's a very smooth kind of slithers into life. It's an atmospheric sound. There's ethnic percussion. Kind of takes me somewhere Fish would maybe be at certain points, but there's also a kind of pop accessibility in terms of something like maybe like Talk Talk. So by pop, we're kind of meaning it's not going to get to number 1 kind of thing. It's much more kind of ethereal and structured than that would maybe suggest. And then the Siren Song, it's kind of got layered chants, clear but forceful vocals. There's a little hint of Riverside in there, and Sadler is outstanding on that. He's good on the whole album, but he's outstanding on that. And then there's The Lord Giveth, which was the song that Schwartz wrote, and that is really stark, really stripped back, and it just brings more emotion into the album. It is very much an emotional, atmospheric album. The lyrics are excellent. There's a loose concept of how disconnected through constant connection we have all become, which is kind of a hot topic, but it's true, I would suggest. And it's handled in quite an abstract kind of way at certain points as well. So it's not blatant and in your face. If you want to just listen to the music, you can listen to the music. If you want to follow along with the lyrics, then you can do that too. There are not lyrics in this, unfortunately, but Sadler sings them in such a way that you can hear them anyway. You don't actually need to read along. So I really like the cover as well, and even the kind of promo shots. I presume that this is Hack and Sadler. I don't know which is which, if I was to be quite honest with you. But the whole thing, I think it's a really cohesive album. It kind of feels joined together. And I think the mood and atmosphere that's created in the music really comes across very strongly in the album itself. But the main event is the 6 songs, and they are really strong, really good. So, debut album, I kind of thought I would like it because of what's connected to it. I've been a little bit more impressed than that. This is really good. I like Frequency Drift a lot. I hope they're not done, but I'll definitely take more of that as well. Okay. So, album number 2 is Galahad. This is The Last Great Adventurer. So, Galahad came through in the neo-prog scene of the 80s. They have evolved massively since then. And if you wanted to go and listen to their 1991 debut, Nothing Is Written, and compare it to this, I think, other than maybe the vocals, you would struggle to really know that it's the same band. And I mean that in a very good way. So this is a really dense and confusing catalogue that Galahad have. You go and look at their discography, there are so many releases, it's unbelievable. But I think that this is their 11th full official studio album, and it's their first since 2018's Seas of Change, which was a really good album, a little bit different from them. I would suggest that this kind of brings it right back into the heart of what Galahad have been doing over the last kind of decade or so, maybe a little bit longer than that. They have released an awful lot of things in the time between albums, because the band, which is Stuart Nicholson on vocals, he's been there since 1985, Spencer Luckman on drums since 87, Dean Baker on keyboards since 97, and you've got Lee Abraham, who I think has probably made a real name for himself as a solo artist in recent times. He's been in the band before on bass, but he's been their guitarist since 2017. And then you've got Mark Spencer, who is on bass, and he's been back in the band since 2018. So a little bit of coming and going, but it doesn't really sound like that. And even the guys that are more recent have had their second stint, strangely enough. But they've all got little side projects and splinter things, so it feels like there's been a Galahad release every year, and there actually hasn't. It took me by surprise. It's been 4 years.
I haven't kept up with them in so long. I have a few of their earlier releases, but it's probably been 10, 15 years since I've heard a new Galahad release.
Okay. They've been really consistent since then. They have a lot of splinter things. It's a very interesting kind of way they do it. Yes, Lee Abraham has got a growing and impressive solo career that runs alongside Galahad now, which is a really good thing. But there are little splinters that kind of use Galahad in their name, and they have releases that feel a bit like them but don't. And I quite like that. It's interesting to kind of keep it in the family. It's all still run through their website. It still feels very joined to what they do, but there's not a new album coming out every year or every second year or whatever. So it's an interesting way of doing it, a little bit different. I quite like it. You kind of feel like you're carried along on the journey with them in that sense. So for me, I would say, along with the band we're going to talk about next, that Galahad are probably the most consistent band that have come out of that kind of neo-prog revival. There's maybe Free Pendragon as well, who we're not talking about today. I would say that there's no doubt that what Galahad are still doing falls firmly into the world of prog. It's progressive. It's not necessarily prog when I kind of think about it. There's electronic flavours, there's kind of big, bold rock beats at certain points, and definitely a willingness to experiment. Their last 3 or 4 releases, yes, they sound like Galahad. They couldn't really sound like anybody else, but they're remarkably different to each other. And I think that's quite brave. I also think it's very interesting. A lot of progressive music doesn't progress as such. Galahad definitely do. So arguably the centre point of The Last Great Adventurer is the title track. It's the longest song on the album, and it closes the album proper, which I'll come to. And this is actually the singer. This is Stuart Nicholson's father that we see on the cover here, and he is the last great adventurer. And the whole song is about him. And it doesn't really, it kind of touches on, it's not so much about this kind of clear adventuring, mountaineering spirit. It's really just about what an inspiring character he appears to have been. And the lyrics are fantastic. They are very honest and very stark, and very loving, which is quite unusual in this setting for a kind of, prog rock is usually bold and bombastic. So to have such an honest lyric, I really quite like. And unsurprisingly, the vocals on it from Stuart himself are just phenomenal. But the rest of the band are not overshadowed. It's just tremendous. It's a really interesting thing. So you've also got things like Blood, Skin and Bone, a really kind of deep, muscular sort of beast of a song. There's a growling riff from Lee Abraham, and he locks in super tight with the keyboards of Dean Baker. Now, the arrangements are great across the whole thing, but I would suggest it's interesting because Lee Abraham really has come into his own in recent years as a solo artist, as part of this band. His performance on this album is fantastic. And yet I would say that this is maybe the best keyboard-driven album that Galahad have had. It's not very easy to say, a lot of hands in there. But it really works. It seems to have allowed the guitars to have kind of more room to breathe as the keyboards kind of take an awful lot of the themes and it kind of run with them. And I really like that. Songs like Alive and Omega Lights, the keyboards there are just fantastic. There's a little bit of kind of Jean-Michel Jarre around the atmospheres. You wouldn't mistake the two, but there's those kind of big, bold strokes of sound that I really like. And then you've got something like Enclosure 1764, which is actually an 18th century nursery rhyme that the band have adapted. And it's all about really the inequalities of life and how those who have seem to be able to take more, and those who do not have very much appear to be allowed to take very little. And it's just an interesting little poignancy right in the middle of the album, but Galahad tend to do that. So there are 2 bonus tracks on the album. If you buy it on CD, I think that the reason that they're bonus tracks is because the vinyl does not feature these. You might be able to get them in a different format if you get the vinyl. I'm not 100% certain on that. And the 2 bonus tracks, Normality of Distance is a really kind of wonderful storytelling song, a bit more stripped down and bare. And then you've got Another Life Not Lived. And that was originally written by Stu and Neil Pepper, who was a previous member of the band who passed away, unfortunately. And they wrote that in 2019. People who are into Galahad will know it as a bonus demo from 2012's Battle Scars album, but here they've finished it as a song completely. And it's not really there as a tribute to Neil, but it obviously is at the same time. And it's a tremendous piece of work. And it's actually one of the highlights of the whole thing, I think. So I would advise that anyone that can add that, if they want to get it in vinyl, see if you can find it in a different format as well, because it would be a shame not to have it. So, yep, 37 years as a band, Galahad. And I would put this up there with, is it my favourite? It's too early to tell. It's not far away. It's in that mix. It definitely would be in that conversation if I was going to go away and rank the catalogue. It's really, really good. And they've really been such a strong band in recent times. Very good stuff. So, The Last Great Adventure from Galahad.
What label are they on now?
I think that'll be independent. Yeah. So Avalon Records is what it's credited as there. And I would imagine that realistically that means them.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the best place to go would be their website. Whether they've got much in the way of US distribution, I'm not 100% certain. Not sure about that, actually. Never thought about that.
I'm trying to figure out like what was the last album I heard from them? Might be Sleepers. That's a long time.
Oh, wow. I mean, Sleepers is really good.
Yeah.
But I would suggest that I think that Empires Never Last is probably still the one that I would hold up as my favourite. Really like that album. It's a really strong guitar album. The sound on it is really sharp. Carl Groom from Threshold is involved in the sound, as he is on the new one as well. He's kind of a de facto kind of side member of the band. He's always kind of helping sculpt the sound. The album sounds fantastic. But yeah, the work that they've done, earlier fans of the band may disagree with me, but I would put it out there and say that you really are missing the strongest material.
Yeah, I just, it's one of those bands that I started with like fairly early on and then just kind of lost track of them because I'm just kind of looking at their discography right now, trying to figure out, which ones I have. I've got Moment of Madness, Nothing Is Written, Sleepers. I think I have Following Ghosts. I don't think I have anything after that.
Wow,
so there's quite a. I think I basically the end of the '90s is when I just stopped buying their stuff for whatever reason.
Yeah, as happens with certain bands. Yes, absolutely. You've got a lot of good stuff to catch up on there. I think from Empires Never Last on through Battle Scars, State of Euphoria, Sea of Change. I think I've missed an album in there as well. And then through to the new one. There's a real journey there. No two albums sound the same, but at the same time, they do have quite a signature sound that runs through them. And Stuart Nicholson, I think he's a fabulous singer. I got into the band through some of the live output. I wasn't there right from the very start. I came in, probably just before Empires Never Last. But I got into them through, I think it was a Live in Poland DVD. And he comes on, and the song is I Could Be God. And that's what they open with. And it's got a great keyboard opener. And it's a really great song to open a show with. Never seen them live. Please play up in Scotland, Galahad. And he seems to be able to take on characters and really kind of bring the message of the song across in both his kind of physical demeanor and the power or the fragility of his vocals. He's a real hook for me in this band. But of course, it wouldn't work if the music wasn't up to it, and it absolutely is up to it. So yeah, lots and lots of good stuff in the Galahad catalogue that certainly for yourself and I would imagine others to catch up on too, especially if they're not coming out through major distribution and people maybe they might slip by. So yeah, it's worth going and maybe doing a bulk lot. I'm not on commission, people.
Yeah, it was just, I was listening to you talking about the new album, and I was like saying to myself, I'm like, God, what was the last Galahad album I bought? And so then I went on Wikipedia and just started looking at all their albums. I'm like, wow, yeah, it's, because they started fairly early on. I was right on them at the early '90s, and by the end of the '90s, I moved on from them for whatever reason. Maybe I just stopped seeing their stuff available with whoever I was buying from at the time. Probably Greg Walker or Ken Golden or whatever, and I just they never sent their promos to me to review, and that's that, right? So, but I know you've always reviewed their stuff on the website, and for whatever reason, I just never jumped back in. But I know I liked them quite a bit back when I was listening to them. So
cool. I think that you like all of the albums that have come since what you've kept up with a lot. They're a different band from then. They have evolved a lot. But I think that's a strength because you don't want 6 or 7 albums that just tread the same water, do you? So I think it's a really good thing. I think they're a really, considering how long they've been around and how consistent they've been, they really are one of the undersung bands of the genre. Maybe because they've kind of kept it all in-house and done things kind of under their own steam, which there's a lot to be said for. But at the same time, it maybe does hamper the reach. And they tend to play more shows in Europe than they do even here in the UK. So, I mean, Europe, to be fair, is a kind of hotbed for prog, always has been. So that's maybe not a massive shock. And they do tend to do shows and DVDs and things from Poland and that kind of area. So, that's no great surprise. But yeah, it would be lovely to see them getting a little bit more notice again. Cool. Okay, so the final album that we have to talk about, and I'll lift this gargantuan thing here. Okay, now look at this. The artwork is just absolutely stunning. Okay, so this is Arena. This is a theory of molecular inheritance. Give me easier titles, people.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. That's a mouthful.
Molecular Inheritance. There you go. That was better the second time. So this is the band's 10th album, and it's their first with singer Damien Wilson. We'll come to that in a bit. Okay. So the band is Damien Wilson, who we will know from Threshold. He has also sung with Rick Wakeman. He has been on Aeon albums. He has part of Headspace. He's got a solo career. He works with Adam Wakeman. He has got things on the go all the time. Over and above him, you have John Mitchell on guitars from It Bites and Kino and Lonely Robot and Frost and numerous other things. Clive Nolan on keys, who also does loads of things on his own, but Pendragon is the main thing that people will know Clive from. The bassist is a guy called, I don't know how to pronounce his first name, Kylan. It's either Keelan, Killen, or Kylan. Not 100% sure. Apologies, Mr. Amos. He's the bassist, and he has been with the Lizard Kings. He was part of the Camorra Theatre Company, which was something that Clive Nolan was kind of running at the time. He had a Camorra album, and I would presume that's where things came together, and he joined the band. And of course, Mick Pointer on drums, one of the founder members of Arena, and the founder member of Marillion. Left them or departed them a long time ago now. Yeah. So, as you will guess, with a title like the one I can't say, you've probably guessed that this is a concept album. Okay. So, the theory in question would appear to be, well, it's complicated. Okay. And it's involved. And it's maybe more complicated and involved than even most prog rock concept albums. But the basis of what's going on here is that genius is inside us. Okay? It's part of us. It's part of our particles, it's part of our atoms, it's part of everything that we are. But then we get the theory of entanglement. And at this point, I will let another member of In the Prog Seat explain to you exactly what this album is about, okay? Because when you open up this thing of beauty, what you'll find is that you have a very short essay by a certain Louis Nasser.
Cool.
Okay? Who kind of does things with all of these strange formulas and symbols in his day job. Okay? So I know that Clive Nolan, having spoken to Louis, actually got in touch with him and asked him, you know, about all of this theory. And according to Mr. Nasser, these are real. These are things that, if this theory was to come into effect, this is a sort of whatever it is that you would write down.
It's like a lot of mumbo jumbo to me.
Well, yes. So what Lewis has said is every molecule in the universe is made of atoms. In turn, every atom is made of elementary particles, electrons, and bound states of up and down quarks that we call the proton. UD or UUD in brackets, I don't know. And the neutron, UD. What is this guy talking about? A deeper inquiry into the quantum nature of our universe reveals that every elementary particle that exists is just a quantia of various continuous space-filling fields. I'll be asking questions later, Peter, okay? I hope you're taking all of this in. More precisely, they are quantized excitations of the vibrations of fields that stretch across the entire universe. Nobody expected this when they tuned in today, did they? Okay? Professor Whitten has proven that quantum fields can become entangled. By means of his theory of quantum field entanglement, a molecule in one point of space-time can be entangled with another molecule elsewhere. And from that idea, I was able to make the concept of molecular heredity, and that some special molecule entanglement of universal quantum fields in, say, Beethoven, could then leave his body through normal thermodynamics and enter the morass until it wound up in another body, and thus that genius is now found a new home. Now,
so basically, the spirit of the Big Bang Theory, Sheldon Cooper just entered into Stephen Reid's body and here on Sea of Tranquility, right? What does all that mean? I don't know.
I think that the gist of it would appear to be that if I was Beethoven, which I'm not, there's genius inside me. But that genius is part of the atoms and particles, and therefore could technically leave me, and after doing whatever it does, could enter somebody else, and they could end up with that genius. And this would appear to be the journey to trying to capture this. Okay, it's much more interesting than that makes it sound.
That's a good thing.
And there's something clever about it as well that I will mention. Okay, so the artwork is by a guy called David Wyatt, and I feel he did the artwork for Contagion from 2003 that Arena released. He also did Pepper's Ghost, which looks nothing like this. I kind of feel a synergy with Contagion and the way that that album looks compared to this one. I like the colours of it. I really like this album. But there you go. Inside is beautiful too, but here we go. So the big news is, of course, that we've got a new singer in town. So Damien Wilson is now on board. Everybody probably knows who he is. I had reservations about this. We touched on this before. I think when we did our album ranking of Arena quite some time ago, we already knew that Damien was going to be part of the band. And I said at that point, well, I love Damien Wilson and I love Arena. Does it do this? It really does. I mean, admittedly, I've spoken to a good friend of mine who was kind of like, I'm not convinced. It had me right from the off. It really did. They put his vocals right up front early on. And after I went, oh, it's Damien Wilson, it worked that well that I just forgot all about it. Now, I say that as someone that I really like Paul Wrightson, who's been with the band. I like Rob Soden, who's been with the band. And I really like Paul Manzi, Cats in Space, and he's now with the Sweet, who is the guy that Damien follows. Mr. Wilson might just top a lot. It really works.
You know, I haven't heard one note on this album. That doesn't surprise me, because I think when we did that album ranking show, however long ago that was, and we were talking about Damien now being in the band, I'm a big fan. I think he is, anything he touches turns to gold. So my instant thought was like, I'm totally okay with this. I haven't heard a lick of the new music, but I'm sure it's going to be great. So I'm looking forward to hearing this.
I think you'll absolutely love it. I think he's incredible on it, actually. He's a storyteller. He's a really strong melodic presence on the album, and he's a powerful vocalist. You bring all that together, and you have something really special in your hands. And it just seems to me that much of he's been great in everything else he's been a part of, this just really clicks. And I've also had the pleasure of seeing them live in recent weeks. He has mastered the back catalogue. The gig was really spectacular, but he was great. And I would go as far as to say you could kind of see the band looking at each other at certain points going, we've landed on our feet here, haven't we? You know? Because it just works. It really, really works. So the overall effect on this is to some extent what you would expect. And I mean that as a compliment. Okay, so there are huge melodies, there are biting riffs, there are fabulous keyboards all the way through this. And Arena, as I think they seem to just be able to pick you up, put you in their world with this album. I think that John Mitchell has been wrapped up a little. I think this is maybe the most overtly guitar album that they've put out there, but not to the detriment of anything else. Clive Nolan is kind of the main songwriter in the band, so you know that he's going to still stamp his authority all over everything. Pointer and Amos work really well together. I think that this is possibly the strongest rhythm section that we've seen in this band now. They seem to really come together, and it really works. And I'm really impressed. There's 11 songs here. It runs to just over an hour, and there is not a single second here that's wasted. It never lags. Time Capsule starts us off. It bursts the album into life. There's a really heavy staccato guitar riff. There's no intro. There's no gentle kind of start to the album. It just straight out and it takes you back the first time you press play. You really do kind of, wow, that's not what I anticipated at all. But then the keys come in, and then there's a bit of swirling chanting. It's really heavy, but then it pulls it all back, and they allow Damien Wilson to kind of, I would sing it, but I would ruin it. There's a real section, and it builds and builds and builds, and I like that. It's almost like they're kind of going, look what we've got. Look what you can do. And then we go into The Equation, the Science of Magic. And there's beautiful piano, again, Wilson gets to show off his fragile side. But what I like, there's strings and there's atmosphere, but they're clever enough to make strange little things like "This Is My Equation" into a genuine hook kind of sing along. And that's what I mean by the concept sounds really convoluted, a little bit up its own arse as prog rock can be. But there's sing along songs here that are actually working along with a concept. And there's 21 grams. That's another unlikely sing along. Really good work from Mick Pointer on this song. He's really, really good on this. It's moves from something really subtle and it's something really kind of moving and atmospheric. Confession continues that kind of atmospheric sound. And the whole album just kind of goes from there. I could take you through all the songs, but wow, it's just so strong. Integration, I mean, that's a track that builds, and Nolan is just phenomenal. And the keyboard sounds and the keyboard work is fantastic, but there's also great guitar work there. And it's quite Marillion-like in places, but I mean kind of like at the end of early Marillion kind of like in places. It's maybe the best song on the whole thing. Life Goes On closes it out. I mean, the guitar solo on that song is just absolutely ridiculous. Off the charts, fantastic. John Mitchell is just, what a talent, you know? And it's interesting because in his own solo work, that really isn't something that he highlights an awful lot, I don't think. And here, he's really asked to go and grab things and run with them. And it's great.
Yeah, I just wrote up a review of the new Lonely Robot, and I was kind of lamenting the fact that there's really not a lot of guitar solos on there, and I'm like, you know, yeah. So yeah, I'm ready to hear some John Mitchell because I think he's a pretty tremendous player.
He's a tremendous player, and he's really utilized on this. I like Lonely Robot. I kind of like that more pop-based thing. I would take this over at any time, let's be honest. But I do think I like the Lonely Robot albums. I'm maybe not convinced that the newest one is the best of the 4 I think there are now. But yeah, I suppose if you can cover the bases, why wouldn't you? But yeah, when you hear him play on this, you do wonder why on his own material he's not maybe doing that a little bit more. So if Arena fans were looking for kind of what does this sound like? Well, it sounds like Arena, but yeah, there's a lot of different aspects of Arena. Now, I'm maybe being quite so enthusiastic about this because I would suggest that this sounds like Contagion, but heavier. And Contagion is really, it's my favourite Arena album. To let you understand how much I like this, I'm not sure it's still my favourite Arena album. This is really, really, really good. And I think this year's been really strong right across the board for prog and rock and various different things. It's in the equation, pardon the pun, for best album of the year at this stage, in my humble opinion. That's how good it is. I listened to it again just last night, just to kind of refresh my memory before we sat down to do this. And I had to press play as soon as it finished. So this version has 2 discs. Now, the downside is it would appear that it's not cheap. There's nothing about this would appear to be very cheap for the kind of CD version.
So that's the CD version, not the LP version?
This is... Okay, so this is the 2-disc version. So you do have some spectacular artwork in here and all the lyrics in proper kind of coffee table book kind of format. Wasn't cheap.
Coming in multiple formats, right? Because there's that.
Yes.
There's also the regular like digipack or jewel case version of the CD. Yes. Correct.
I think there's a single CD version. I think there's a dual pack double. There is this fancy deluxe one. There are vinyl versions and quite a few vinyl options, which is the standard these days, to be fair. On the bonus disc, what you get is there's one standalone song, which isn't available on anything else. Then you get, I think, 3 or 4 acoustic versions of songs off the album. And then you get some instrumental versions of songs off the main album. Now, I've been a little bit critical before of bands kind of sticking a bonus disc on there of just instrumental versions of the main disc. It works for some. I'm never really drawn to listen to it again very often. Yes. What I like about this, though, is that the acoustic versions really give Damien Wilson the chance to kind of go, I could do something different with these songs. He changes the way that the vocals work in them. They've not just lifted it and put it on top of a different arrangement. They have gone and done something different with them. And you think, oh, wow, okay, this is different and that's different. And these vocals are much more upfront because obviously it's a bit more restrained musically. But then the instrumental versions of some of the other songs allow you to go, oh, wow, I never noticed that little guitar part. Oh, those keyboards do this at that point, because I was listening to the vocals and follow along with the story and all these kind of things. And then you've got a standalone song, which is really good. So rather than just kind of being the whole album instrumental, you do get different aspects. Is it essential stuff? Probably not. It is for somebody like me. And if you're as big a geek collector arena fan as I am, then yes. I mean, I've also got the coffee table book thing sitting down behind me that you can get as part of the bundle and various things as well. But let's not get into that, or we could be here all day just talking about this one release in various formats and styles and various things. So yeah, so this album, which I'm going to try and say again, he says actually scroll at the top so you can read the name, because I can't remember it, it's not memorable, is The Theory of Molecular Inheritance. Okay. It's going to be in around my album of the year. I can't tell you if it is the album of the year, but it has knocked itself into that equation with the 3 or 4 other things that are kind of in my head for that at this stage. Really good.
We should probably mention, because you were talking about all the different formats, there is, from what we've heard, somewhat of a distribution issue here in the States. For those folks watching here in the States, it is hard to get here in the US at the moment, but I think you can order it directly from the band, or they probably have some better distribution going on over in the UK right now for various formats.
You can go to them. I mean, it's really everything is released by Arena through Verglass, which basically is their website.
Yep,
that's where I went and got it from. I pre-ordered, to be fair, so I got it on week of release. So yes, that is probably the best place to go. I would imagine that when you check the prices on there and then look at what the prices are outside of the UK market, you might even still be as well buying from them. Don't quote me on that. You would need to go and compare and contrast to be certain on that. It is, if there's one thing that's going to make me go, it's not a cheap release, and it's not really a cheap release no matter how you do it. But the modern music world stroke industry is a difficult game. So when you're putting together things like this and the amount of thought and time that's gone into this, the package is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And if you go for the deluxe, the booklet, and it's not massive, has to be said. There are bigger books with more pages and more illustrations and things out there, but it is a real thing of beauty. It is fantastic, and I'm delighted to have it. But there are other factors for depending how much of a fan you are and various things like that. But you need to hear the music, I think. If you like that style of progressive rock, you're going to love this, I think. But there you go.
Yeah, I've got to get a hold of it soon because we're nearing almost November already. I'm like, oh crap, I got to get my list of the year ready, and there's already lots of contenders for So I you always hate when you get late in the year and something really good comes out late in the year and you don't get to it, right? And then you're in January and you finally do listen to it and you're like, oh, this would have made my top 10 last year, and you're like, so I don't want that to happen. So I'm desperately trying to make sure I get everything that I know is coming out before like December even rolls around. So that's like one of the last few that I know of. I'm sure there's more that are going to pop up and be like, oh, I need that one too. But yeah, it's always very dicey this time of year because you got those stragglers that just kind of pop into your lap on December 10th, and you're like, oh, man, I can't include this. I already got my list all put together.
It does seem that there's also a glut. It has been a busy year for releases anyway, for a variety of reasons, obviously what's happened in the years previous. But the last kind of couple of months,
yes,
have just been crazy with what's landed. It's just
it seems like July.
That's no bad thing.
Yeah.
I found August into October as well has just been crazy with what's coming out. And from a very personal point of view, if I was to go through current, not so much heritage, but current prog rock acts and say, who would I like an album from, and just tick them off, I think they've all released an album this year.
For the most part, yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, it's and you're right, it's gotten a little crazier the last couple of months for whatever reason. So shit, I was just driving around the other day listening to the new Queensryche and thinking, God, this is top 5 for me for the year.
It's sitting just over there. I only got it 2 days ago, and already it's I've had to put it aside today to listen to other things and didn't really want to. I mean, I know you've reviewed it already. The only thing that really sticks in me is getting to know the album. There is nothing worse than it stops and I'm singing Billy Idol.
It's kind of strange, right? But yeah, but it's like thankfully it's at the end of the
it's
album.
a really good cover version, but does it really need to be there?
Nah.
I'm not sure. I'm pleased to have it because they do it really well. But the album finished and I'm walking out going, "What the revolution?" And I'm like, "Oh, really?"
It just doesn't fit. It's just totally off the wall, crazy.
Isn't it?
Yeah. But thankfully, it's at the end. It's at the end of the album. Yeah, because when I was playing at the end of the day, I was like, "Yeah, I don't need to hear this right now." It's like it's just kind of like it changes everything from all the songs that came before because there's a certain feel to the album. I don't want to derail the whole conversation here, but there's a flow and a feel to that whole album, and then that comes on, and you're like, "Why is this here?" Right?
Right at the end.
It's just like, come on, that's no. But yeah, but it is well done. I give you that.
Yeah, it is really well. It's possibly better than anything on the Covers album.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, we digress as always.
So we're gonna put the full titles of all these albums will be in the video description below. So go and check them all out. Looks like we got 3 winners there. So Stephen, you want to just hold them all up? Yep, there you go. Very cool.
Here we go. So we've got Haven of Echoes, The Indifferent Stars. We've got Galahad, The Last Great Adventurer. And we have The Theory of Molecular Inheritance. I've got that nailed by Arena. That's the 3 of them.
The album title that nobody will ever remember. Just look up New Marillion 2020. New Arena 2022. And there is a New Marillion this year as well. So yes, that is right. Yeah.
There is a New Marillion this year too.
Yes. There you go. So there you have it, everybody. 3. There you go. Yeah, that's quite good as well, and quite good meaning really good. So yeah, stay tuned, folks. We should have. I'm going to try very, very hard today to get you a review of the new Cult CD, the new Dead Daisies, and the new Venom Inc. That is, I believe, what is on tap for today. If for whatever reason I don't get to any of those, or I don't get to one of them, it'll come in next week. And we also have new Stradivarius, new Motorpsycho. We've got some really cool live stuff from Frank Zappa and Alice Cooper and Steve Hackett and Van den Plas. I've got these Tedeschi Trucks EPs, 4 of them that I've got to get to, and there's other stuff here too. So Anima Morte and Impellitteri and Arthur Brown and big stack. I got a stuff, and then I have something else is coming in. The new Talus is coming in. I haven't even gotten that for whatever reason. There's been kind of like a supply issue here in the States for that, but everybody's talking about that. So when it gets here, it gets here. So lots of new stuff. So we'll bring you this and much more. And Stephen also will be back probably in about 2 weeks, I guess, because he's wants to review the new Gandalf Fist.
Yep.
And
also the new Magenta.
Yes. There we go. So
I liked it today. Very different. Very different.
So we'll get both of those on one episode with Stephen, probably maybe a week or 2 from today. So it's going to be next Wednesday or the Wednesday after. So cool. So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Stay tuned. What do we got? It's Wednesday, right? Yes, it is. So tomorrow we've got the Monsters Den. Friday morning, the Funhouse. Friday morning with Martin Popoff. We've got the UK connection. Stephen will be back Saturday, where Stephen, Simon, and myself will be ranking the songs on a classic album. That album, of course, is Meatloaf's Bad Out of Hell. Maybe not classic in Stephen's eyes, but we'll see. And then we've got ranking the albums on Sunday. So lots happening this week. So we'll see you all there. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alerted of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit that like button. So for Stephen, Reid, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you real soon here with more stuff. Take care. Bye-bye.